We are live. I always feel like I have to look alive when I see that little, your meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. For those of you who were here with us yesterday, wow, you guys look really familiar. Like, it's been a really long time since yesterday that I saw you. My name is Ahmed Dents, Development and Artistic Associate here at San Diego Repertory Theatre, and welcome to We Are Listening. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. We have another outstanding episode for you tonight, spectacular guest for you, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jacole Kitchen. How you doing, Jacole?
Hey, Ahmed. Hey, everybody. Great to be here as always.
Everybody, again, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, we have a really great episode for you. Before we get things started, I always want to remind you as you come in the room, please make sure that you have your video off and make sure that you have your microphone muted. So again, make sure that you have your video off and your microphone muted as you are coming into the room. We got a couple of announcements for you before we get started. I want to just let you know also that as we do get started, we will have a question and answer period. So if you have a question or a comment, please submit it in the chat, whether you're watching on Zoom or on Facebook. And again, one more time, please just make sure that you have your camera muted and your microphone muted and your camera off. Want to get into a couple of announcements for you, let you know a couple of things that are going on here at the Rep. Tonight at the Rep, online at the Rep, at 7 o'clock, right after We Are Listening, is the 19th Annual Klezmer Summit, Jews, Jazz, and Justice. So if you want to check out some spectacular music that is part of the Jewish Arts Festival, please head on over to sdrep.org and get your tickets for Jews, Jazz, and Justice, the Klezmer Summit taking place tonight at 7 o'clock. Also want to remind you that the San Diego Repertory Theater's production of JQA has been extended through November 29th. It is a spectacular show, especially in the political climate that we're in. It'll let you take a look at things a little differently. It's funny, it's raw. You definitely want to check it out. It's a New York Times Critic Choice. So again, JQA running now through November 29th. So please check that out. You can get your tickets at sdrep.org. Also want to remind you that coming up on, also Hershey Felder, A Paris Love Story, will begin streaming on November 22nd live from Florence. You definitely want to check that out. Again, head on over to sdrep.org and get your tickets for that. And I want to remind you that coming up on December 1st, yes, Tuesday, December 1st is a National Day of Giving. It is Giving Tuesday, and San Diego Rep will be doing a day of virtual events for Giving Tuesday, a full day of virtual events, along with a special episode of We Are Listening. So get all that information at sdrep.org. And speaking of We Are Listening, as I told you, we're going back to back. We had Sam Woodhouse on yesterday, who was discussing the Rep's equity, inclusion, and diversity plans. You can check out that full video on our Facebook page, SDRep, San Diego Repertory Theater's Facebook page or YouTube page. And a couple of announcements for We Are Listening coming up. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with Nicole Pryor
Derner Sessian.
There you go. See what she said. And Destiny Lilly. That'll be a spectacular episode coming up on December 17th. Many of you know this name. Spectacular actor, singer, and new board member. At Signet, Anise Ritchie will be joining us. Jocelyn Prince will be joining us on Thursday, January 7th. And on Thursday, February 4th, we will be joined by artistic directors Sam Woodhouse, Chris Ashley, and Barry Edelstein, and they will be collectively talking about equity, diversity, inclusion moving forward, and just the state of theater as we move forward into 2021 in the midst of our current COVID crisis. Jacole, you got any announcements for the folks?
As always, head on over to lajollaplayhouse.org to check out the Digital Wow series. Coming up, dropping Monday, one of the dopest projects I've ever had the pleasure to work on. It is an intergenerational music and spoken word piece that is a a protest and also a prayer for this moment. It is called Spittin' Truth to Power While Light Leaping for the People. It features two amazing intergenerational artists that have come together to make this piece. I got to be a producer on it and hang out on set. It's one of the coolest things that you'll see. 3 parts dropping Monday, November 23rd. Keep your eye out for Digital Wow.
There you go. There you go. Y'all check it out. Make sure you head on over to all of our websites. Again, We Are Listening is in partnership with La Jolla Playhouse and the Old Globe. So make sure you visit sdrep.org, lajollaplayhouse.org, and the oldglobe.org. Again, welcome. Again, make sure your camera is off, your microphone is muted, and we will get into tonight's episode. Tonight is a special episode. It's somewhat of a board member episode. We have board members from 3 theaters here in San Diego, a brand new board member, part of San Diego Reps board. So let's go ahead and bring everybody on camera. And please welcome to We Are Listening, Jasmine Sadler, new board member at San Diego Repertory Theatre, Stephanie Bulger, board member at the Old Globe, and John Brooks, board member at Moxie Theater. How y'all doing?
Wonderful.
Doing great.
Great.
Great, great, great. Now, we got a little tradition here. We are listening because, you know, anybody can read a bio, but we like for you to kind of introduce yourself to the audience, give us a little short synopsis of the route you took to get into the performing arts and how you got here. And I'm going to go clockwise on my screen, which means I will be starting with Jasmine, the brand new board member here at San Diego. First of all, welcome to San Diego Repertory Theater as a board member.
Yay, thank you.
Jasmine, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Sadler. I've been in San Diego for 8 years. I'm originally from Detroit. I grew up dancing ballet, so that was my main draw to the arts. So that was my start. My parents put me in everything, so I started with figure skating, then dance and gymnastics and softball, golf, basketball, lots of different things. They let me try everything. But then I also really love math a whole lot. And so I also wanted to help other people love math. So that's really what my passion kind of was, but I love dancing. And so around the time in high school, and I had to decide on a major for college, I ended up choosing between engineering or dance. And so I actually pursued aerospace engineering because of the space shuttle disaster, Columbia, that happened around that time. And as most women join the STEM space, it's because we want to help and we want to save lives and we want to do great things for the world. And so I pursued aerospace engineering, graduated from the University of Michigan, aerospace engineering with the math minor. So I worked as an engineer for 10 years, but now working full-time for myself as the CEO of the STEAM Collaborative. So I work with mid-sized, youth-focused nonprofit organizations to bring science, technology, engineering, arts, and math to mostly Black students and girls. And so that's my main target audience, because ultimately when they get to be adults and in this STEM space, that they're not the only one that's there. And so that they actually stick with it and have happy careers and stay in that space. So yeah, and then I got to the board, just love the arts. Concerts are my stress relief, all that kind of stuff. Love the live stage and just always in the space. And so John and I we go way back on a few different projects, and he asked me if I could join the rep board. He nominated me to join. So it's coming full circle. So thank you, John. Thank you, Rep. Thanks, Ahmed. Like everybody here, you know, I have to thank for my journey being here today. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here today, Jasmine, and thank you for joining the rep board. Like you're going to be a breath of fresh air. So we appreciate you being here. How about you, Stephanie? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. What I first want to say is thank you, Ahmed, and thank you, Jacole, for providing this kind of space. I think this is so important for us to have these kinds of conversations. So I want to first thank you and also say hello and welcome to your audience as well out there. I'm so happy to be here and to meet these new people, these board members. I've never met them before, and I'm hoping that we are going to have a chance to talk even after this. What led me to the Old Globe is really a love of literature and service to the community. I'm a transplant to San Diego. Been here for roughly 6 years. And I've been on the board of the Old Globe for about 5 of those years. I came from Detroit, Michigan. Hi, Jasmine. Came from Detroit, Michigan, out here to San Diego, which is a lovely, lovely city. And my career is in higher education, which is why I came out here. I'm in a community college district, San Diego Community College District. And I've been an arts and humanities supporter and advocate for many, many years. It's been really quite an honor to be on the board of the Old Globe and to assist the Old Globe with the kinds of work that board members do, which is governance and oversight and fiduciary responsibility, time, talent, treasure, those kinds of things. But what also attracted me to the Old Globe was the mission of the Old Globe, which was really solidified after I arrived. And it's to preserve and strengthen and advance American theater. And so that's what I look for. I look for the strengthening and advancing American theater on the stages and the values. This is was very compelling to me, which is making theater matter and making theater matter to more people. And that's a value system that I can get my mind around. So, really, I believe that artists, particularly theater artists, provide an important role in society because artists are, they show us our humanity and where in all of its forms. And sometimes we don't like ourselves on the stage, but that's part of what we're trying to accomplish here as well. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation and to talking more.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. John, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here as well. So my name is John Brooks. I'm from Oakland, California. I was raised there and in Los Angeles. I was introduced to the arts at a very young age. First of all, music. My father played saxophone, and back then, pretty much all families had a piano in their house, and kids were encouraged to learn some kind of musical instrument. So I learned piano first, and then I went to the saxophone. And because of that, I was in the orchestra in elementary school and junior high school. And back then we used to have productions where the drama department would get together with the music department and put on a play for the school. So the first play was Peter Pan, and I was in the orchestra pit. I knew all my music, but I was like looking on stage the whole time, like, wow, look at those people. And I was like memorizing their lines and stuff. It just fascinated me. So that got me hooked to the theatrical arts. I stayed with music, didn't pursue theatrical art, but it remained a part of me throughout high school. I went to plays in LA, other drama type things. And then when I moved here to San Diego in 1995, I was introduced to actually the Rep first, and then Moxie Theater. And Moxie's mission is to bring a voice to women in theater. And back then, there was only 7% of the plays produced all over the United States was by women, right? So they wanted to increase the voice of women in the arts, and I was down with that. So I joined their board, and then a couple of years in, I became their board president. And then I moved to Hungary, and then I came back, and they said, you got to come back on the board. So I was roped back into that. So in between my arts thing, I'm also like Jasmine, I'm into science. So I became a wildlife biologist, and I had to choose early on too, whether I wanted to like pursue something in the arts or science. And my passion has always been environment first and foremost. So I went that route, but always kept the arts as a part of my life, because as I was telling the panelists earlier, that I believe life's a thing, and there's no law saying I can't do more than one. And the arts is life. It is. It mimics life. You see that if you go to a theater and you're looking on stage, that little small area becomes just so vast in my mind that I can see everything that's happening as if it was real time and as if it was on a stage. And I really enjoyed that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, all of you. As we always start off with, we start with the moment that brought us here, of course, the moment that why we are listening even exists, and that is this year 2020, beginning with COVID and even the deaths that led up to the death of George Floyd, and what really kind of really, you know, was the spark to really light this conversation that we're having now, not just, you know, not just here in San Diego, but nationally and worldwide. I always start off with this question of how, you know, what have your thoughts been this summer with the situation? And I'll start with you, John, because me and you kind of kicked this off together. We were here together at opening night for House of Joy, and you know, like Jay-Z said, grand opening, grand closing. Like it opened that night, and then the next day the governor shut the state down, and that was it for the show. It went on virtually, but you know, that was the last night that, you know, we had all been in theater, had all been in a lobby, or had all been at a show, you know, together. So give me a little bit of your thoughts about what your thoughts have been this summer, as now that we've moved forward, you know, in doing virtual performances, but now theaters nationwide are in this push, you know, with inclusion and diversity. And like I always say, you know, like the statements have been made, and the this and that, and we gonna do that, and we want this, and we want this percentage of this, you know. What are your thoughts? What have been your thoughts in this summer
So
at this point?
yeah, it's sort of mixed, because I think first and foremost, in my mind, it goes, I've heard this before. I mean, I lived through the 60 riots, and promises were made and promises were broken, and people forget and go on with their busy lives. I think the difference with this one, because we are more into the digital age where people can see things more real time than in the past. And I think with George Floyd's death, even though Blacks have been being killed every day up to that point, something in the consciousness of the world was sort of ignited there. And it could possibly have to do with the fact we were all inside in our own thoughts. And then I saw an outpour of support for the Black Lives Matter movement. But in my heart, I was like, I don't know if you guys really mean that, or you just afraid that your shop's going to get firebombed or destroyed or whatever, and you're showing the solidarity at this moment, but will you continue it? So there's that. Now with the theater, like you said, with House of Joy, I was really excited for that play to do well. It was just brilliantly done, and people that we've never seen in those roles were on stage. I think the term if life hands you a lemon, you need to make lemonade. I knew at that point that theater, because I'm a biologist and I actually ran for Congress, and I championed this climate crisis. And one of the things I said was, we will see an increase of infectious diseases worldwide, including pandemics like what we're having. That wasn't even occurring at the time, but here we are, where the world is being shut down, and this is not going to be the end of it. It's when people say, oh, we can't wait to go back to normal, there is no more normal. We need to deal with the cards that are dealt now. And live theater or arts in general are going to suffer under this, unless we as patrons of the arts and people in the arts can find a way to still convey our message to the people out there. And so digital may be the way to go until we can have some kind of safe space where you can see it live. There is no substitute for that, being live, seeing a live theater. But our minds are such that we can think of something that's close. So.
How about you, Stephanie? What have your thoughts been this summer into the fall and winter?
You know, I've had a range of emotions since the murder of George Floyd in May, because it seems to me that we're in a reawakening in a lot of ways to the historic inequities in our country. And that happened, that was sort of catalyzed, accelerated in some ways with his murder, because as you mentioned earlier, this has all gone on before. And I would imagine that everybody on this call, for sure, has had experiences that would cement that for them. So I think we're in a reawakening in a lot of ways, and I've had a range of emotions from sadness to joy, I would say, encouragement that I've been in rooms in the last 5-6 months where we've had some really heart-wrenching conversations with people from very diverse backgrounds. And those conversations have been encouraging to me, in some cases surprising to me, but I've been very, very appreciative of being in rooms like that to have these kinds of conversations, because I really believe that having courageous conversations is where all of this starts and where true change is going to occur. You've got to be able to have conversations with people who may not have had experiences like you.
That's right. That's right. How about you, Jasmine?
And so this week is, I guess, really special to me because it's my 1 year full-time entrepreneurship anniversary. And so
Yes.
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. And so, you know, this last year has been like really dealing with the workplace trauma that I had to go through as an engineer, and being, you know, at the last company I was at, I was the only Black engineer, the only woman engineer, and the only Black woman in the whole building. So, you know, quitting that space, going full time on my own, and then the pandemic and things shutting down where, you know, I was most accessible to students in schools or after school programs or things like that. And then just like really dealing with that. I mean, at the time I was being an educator at an all girls high school around STEAM, and the school had to shut down, and, you know, that was their only hope. So slight depression from there. But, and then when the Black Lives Matter stuff, I mean, all of that, George Floyd's murder, that was it. That was it for me. I was just like, I need to do, I don't know, like my family's not out here. The people who I grew up with, like nobody's in San Diego except for people that I've met recently. And so I'm like, I gotta go home. And so I went home to Detroit, ended up staying for a whole month. You know, the longest I've ever been home since I've started working, you know, that I could just be home with my parents, around people that I love, and read and heal, and really also deal with like corporate stuff that was still on me, understanding my greatness, understanding like the power that we all have. I mean, even just figuring out like what my form of protest would be. And so, because I'm not one to walk or march or things like that, or maybe I am, and I just wasn't there emotionally at the time yet. I mean, still dealing with lots of other things going on. My family health stuff started happening over the summer too. It was just a really, really complicated time, and to be able to try to sort which emotions are coming from which cause, you know, which cause and effect is really going on here. That was really tough. And then my main emotional outlet, or, you know, just social outlet, is either being with children, working with them, or going to the theater, or going to concerts, or being able to dance with my friends or dance at my church. And if all of those options that are usually my healing aren't available, then that really got tough for me. And so of course we made it through. We're here, and you know, things are different. Time for celebration, you know, for me, made it through a year as an entrepreneur full time, and we still keep going, and we still keep innovating. I mean, yeah, so I'll leave that there.
No, it's so real what you're saying about, and I appreciate the way that you put it, is we lost our healing spaces. The place that, you know, I keep thinking about it as, you know, yes, I've lost my social life and the ability to go and do and just unwind with coworkers or friends. But that's how we heal. I mean, yes, I like to heal over overpriced fancy craft cocktails, but that's how I heal, and I miss it. And so I appreciate you saying that. It's not just the social aspect that we've lost. We've lost our place to process and to heal. Thank you for putting it that way.
I also thank you, Jasmine. I agree with that 100%. And I actually started this thing I call curbside concerts in front of my house. Because in the beginning of the pandemic, it was just like a ghost town. Everyone was inside, depressed. And since music was my outlet, I thought, and I play saxophone, but I literally stopped playing. I don't play anymore. I just don't feel it. But I have friends that are professional musicians, and I know they're hurting. So I asked my neighbors first. I said, you guys mind if like I have some friends over and play in the street? Would you guys? Oh yeah, we totally would love that. Wow. So I started doing that. And it's just like taken off, and I've tried to stop a couple. No, don't stop. So people come, the band's in front of my house, and people are in the street and the sidewalks are socially distant, physically distant. and everyone loves it. Just 1 hour, and it just brings an hour of joy to people. So you're right. I agree with that.
Someone mentioned digital programming a little earlier, and I've just been so impressed by the pivoting that the theater companies have been doing with some digital programming, because I think it's the solace that we need right now, because we don't have the kinds of outlets that you're talking about. I think we're probably all subscribers to our theaters. And so we would go to many shows every single year. It was, it's part of the schedule on a regular basis. But I've just been really, really impressed by the digital programming that I've seen.
We were really, I keep saying at the Playhouse, my last day of work was Monday, March 16th. And by St. Patrick's Day, we were shifting to what are we doing as far as digital content. And we kept saying, one of the things that we loved that we were able to do is continue to pay artists, continue to employ artists. But one of the things that we realized maybe a month ago, 8 months into this pandemic, is we're not just able to keep employing artists, we're able to give them a space to create still. We're able to give them something to create. And as much as we need to be employed, we as artists, we as creative people, we need to create. And that's even more of a gift, it feels like. And for our audiences as well, to have something to consume. We don't realize, we know how much we miss you all, but the way that you're consuming the digital content really shows how much you're missing what we're doing as well. One of the things that was just said in the chat that is undeniable in this conversation is the connection between science and art, especially with you, Jasmine, and you, John, as far as having to, the fact that you had to choose between the two as far as which direction you were going to go to make your living, to, have that career trajectory, but neither of you let it go. I love, Jasmine, on your website, you call yourself the dancing rocket scientist. And so can you just talk about, and even the fact that we've gone in the way that we speak from STEM to STEAM. Mm-hmm. Can you just kind of talk about that the connection between the science and the arts?
Yeah, when I started my company in 2014, it was just going to be a math tutoring company because I just love math and I wanted kids to love math too. And, if that was what they were struggling in to get to another technical career, like, let's just get through the math because that's really the prereq for all of it. So that's what it started as. But then when teachers found out that I'm an aerospace engineer, then they would say, well, can you come to my classroom and just stand in the corner? I could say she's a rocket scientist, and then you can, so then kind of started doing that and expanding to more like engineering presentations and workshops. But then I also love dancing, and especially in rooms full of girls, a lot of them were either cheerleaders, dancers, figure skaters, gymnastics, or something like that. So then I started bringing my dance into it too, and saying like, well, if we spin with our arms out versus with our arms crossed, like that's changing your angular velocity, and this is how you would calculate that. Or if I give you a runway and we have to all dance down the runway with a stopwatch and time each other, and then if you do distance over time, then that's speed, which is physics. So all of these kind of ways to like make it fun and make it relatable. Yes. And so just like initially my website was just more like a blog of just kind of talking through those concepts. And I'm like, okay, I do math tutoring, I do engineering presentations, and I do artistic dance. And so then I'm like, wait a minute, but I'm also a very good programmer. So technology is in there. And then I'm like, okay, well, science, like physics is a science. So I'm also a scientist. And I'm like, wait a minute, I am STEAM. Like I'm all of these things that STEAM is talking about. And so then that's when I started just really going with it, especially as it was growing as a term. But I'm like, I was already saying I did math, engineering, and art. And so, yeah, the other two are also what I do too. So bringing those in. And so when people are just like, oh, I'm just a scientist, and so I don't subscribe to the whole STEM and STEAM thing, I'm science, and I'm just like, well, just whatever you relate to, then go with that thing. Like that's completely fine. And so for me, ultimately, I want to own a STEAM university. And so going through the start of that journey right now. So just recently got accepted to the doctoral program in educational leadership at UCSD and Cal State San Marcos. And so going through like what that looks like to run an interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary university where you're actually bringing in the arts, the STEM, virtual reality, remote learning, all the things that I've been doing for a really long time. But I saw somebody mention in the comments, still bringing in that equity, diversity, and inclusion into all of those same things. And so like keeping it relevant. So it's really important. And like we said, you know, technology is the main way we're consuming right now.
I'm like, okay, Shuri, opening your whole like technology university. Okay, my children will be going there forever. Yes. John, what about you?
Well, it was difficult for me in the beginning, trying to make a decision because I really love the arts and sports, but there was something in my mind that made me love the natural world more. I was one of those kids that grew up on television because 60s, that's what we did. And I always would watch the nature programs, you know, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And, you know, Marlon Perkins would sit back while he's sending the other guy to do the work. But then I would always notice on those shows too, you know, like the Tarzan movies, it was always the white people in charge and the black people doing the labor. And I couldn't reconcile that. And I thought, well, why can't we do that? You know, and wait a minute, you're in Africa, and aren't there like Africans doing the work that you did? It was just causing issues in my mind. And so early on, I decided that I was going to major in wildlife biology. Actually, my counselor decided that for me because I gave in to peer pressure early on, like in junior high school, because people were calling me egghead and stuff because I like math. Well, I didn't like math, but I could do it, you know, better than the average person. I'm dyslexic, so it really was hard after a certain point in time. But and so I started dummying down and getting bad grades. And my counselor said, "What's going on here?" And of course, I was a kid, didn't have an answer. And she said, "What did you say you wanted to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to help animals." She said, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "I don't know, get a job, go work at the zoo or something." She says, "Well, what you want to do, you have to go to college, and you're not going to get in with, so either you turn around now or you can forget it." She said more than that, but she did that 2 years in a row. And the second year it stuck. And I said, she's right. Why am I so concerned about what my peers think of me when they're probably not going to be a part of my life down the road? If this is something I want to do, I have to do this for me. So, I mean, I stay with the arts, still playing music and all that, but I decided, all right, I'm going to buckle down, as we used to say, and just start studying. And I changed from like a 1.6 GPA to a 3.6, enough to get me into school, college. So I went to the University of Montana. I was the first Black graduate to get a degree in wildlife biology from that university, which didn't really register till after I got out, because I'm thinking, well, I'm the first? This is like 1981. That's crazy. But there's no one like us that we can look up to in that respect. Again, going back to the Tarzan movies and all those other shows, it was always white people doing stuff and minorities just kind of like being day labor. So, I mean, I say this because it was subconscious. It wasn't something I really processed, but I know it was in the back of my mind. So as I went through my career, it was like, it was clear that I was the oddity. Like I lived in towns that I was the only Black guy, you know, Black person, you know, in North Dakota and Wyoming and Montana and places like that. But I was like loving it. I loved being there. I really didn't care about what they thought of me. I was there because I really loved conservation work. And I forgot what your question was, because I think I went on a side track here.
Well,
It was just about the connection. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, I want to piggyback right where John was right there, and about seeing himself as being, you know, the only Black person in this space. Because as I'm sitting here on the call, you know, one of the discussions we've had, you know, is about on the entry level bringing more not just Black kids, but those who are not financially able to deal with internships to work in the performing arts. Like we want to be able to open entry level positions up to young kids to work in performing arts. Like if my thing is like, if they can go work at McDonald's, they can come usher. If they can go pour popcorn, they can come learn to work at the concession stand. Not because it's just a job, but because as I'm sitting here on this call, I'm looking at 3 board members. I'm looking at you, John, who ran for the 53rd Congressional District, a filmmaker. I'm looking at you, Stephanie, Vice Chancellor at San Diego, at the San Diego City College, San Diego
Community
City
College District.
I'm looking at you, Jasmine, being a literal rocket scientist. But I'm also looking at all of you as being board members. And my thing with them coming in is I want them to come into this industry and see people that they don't usually see in spaces that they don't usually see being occupied by people who look like us. Like, we've already had the challenge. I grew up with the challenge that performing arts wasn't really for Black people. Once I started working in an administrative space, I see hardly any Black people. And so I want to get kind of like to the meat and potatoes with all of you being board members on to kind of talk to us about the importance about boards being diversified. As like, even as Sam was saying last night in our talk, that like when it comes to leadership in theater, it's mostly white and it's mostly male. You know, so I would like all of you to speak to us as far as what your thoughts are, and you know, particularly what led you to the board route. We already kind of went over that, but what is the importance of being on the board, especially being Black people being on the board in the performing arts?
And I want to start with Stephanie, if we can, because one of the things I noted when you were introducing yourself, Stephanie, is you said you've been in San Diego about 5 years, but for about 4 of those, you've been on the board at the Old Globe. So it feels like that was kind of one of your top priorities in settling here. Or so, I would love to have you start us off.
Well, thanks for that. What really led me to the Old Globe and seeking board membership was service to the community, because I'm in a community college district, and so service to the community is part of who I am and part of my passions as well. But as part of the work that I do. And we have one of our colleges actually that's within a stone's throw almost of the Old Globe in Balboa Park. So that's San Diego City College. So that's really what led me there. And then of course my love of literature. I've got 2 degrees in English and literature, and so that really led me there. But I think it's so critical for not just having individuals like students go to theater, but also have opportunities to see the different kinds of occupations that are involved in the theater. It's certainly the artists that produce the theater, the works that are on the stage, but there's also stage hands. There's individuals who work with lighting. There's a business office. There's a marketing and communications arm. And so sometimes people are just not aware, and that exposure is so critical. But I did want to say also that I think it's so wonderful that Jasmine and John have the backgrounds that they've got, because having arts and science mixed in a profession, just having individuals like, you know, children, students understand that they can have both in one person, I think is so important. We want technical people, inventors, innovators, we want them to understand humanity and to create things for our environment and for the human race going forward that actually has some sense of humanity in it. So that's what I would say, that it is really, really critical for us to bring people in, to give them maybe internships, but make those paid internships. There's an incentive there. Also, and that, yes, and that's all part of the social justice roadmap that I know that probably Barry Edelstein will talk more about when he comes in February, but, and I think Sam Woodhouse talked about last night, but I think it's really, really critical.
I think that's really important what you touched upon, because like I tell people all the time, when it comes to my career in the performing arts, when it came to my career in radio, they wouldn't happen if I couldn't get paid. I didn't have the time to do an internship. With radio, is either you got to pay me or it's not going to get done. Like I want to do it, but I have to make some money too, you know. And even hearing, like when we in Freedom Talk, we both understood that we both would not be in the performing arts if it wasn't, when we first started out, we needed a job. We needed to get paid. Like it had to help us pay the bills. And like that, like just like you're saying, my thing of trying to get young people in here is just like you say, for them to understand, or like there's so many different things that happen. I'm a software geek, and that came from my time here in the performing arts. That came from my time of working the ticketing and working the ticketing system. And that's how I end up becoming a halfway of a tech head, you know, and doing what I do now. And so, you know, there's just so many avenues in this. Jasmine, can you speak to this a little bit about, now that you're here on the board here at the Rep, and, you know, let's keep it real like we always do. You know, my relationship with the Rep spans back to 2007. I don't remember meeting a Black board member here. Can you speak a little bit to this, about how you feel about now being a board member here at the Rep, especially at an organization that hasn't had a Black board member in a long time?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Let me start there. It's been a pleasure to be on the board so far. I've been on, I don't know, a couple months now, and it's when I think about it, you know, for me, I guess I look at it as so many other opportunities that I've come across in life, where I'm like, you know, I've worked my butt off, you know, for these different opportunities. And so, like, when your preparation meets that opportunity, then that's when things really happen. And so, you know, I've been working in this space for a long time, not necessarily on the art side, but I've wanted to get more on the art side. And it's also just a pleasure to have Larry Aldridge, who is the former vice president of engineering at Qualcomm, you know, and so somebody who understands engineering. And like, if I were to say engineer to most people, then it's like, oh, she must be really smart. But if I say engineer to Larry, he knows exactly, you know, baseline what that must include in my life. Like, that means I have to have Calc 3, which means I have to have Calc 1, 2, and 3, you know, and that comes with its own commitment and dedication. But having a space that understands my value. And again, like I mentioned about getting out of that corporate world and corporate trauma, of just like having to prove yourself every single day that you're there, and being in a welcoming environment that is receptive and is asking, what do you think? And is making sure that I'm onboarded properly, instead of having to do that myself. And, you know, when we're going through certain documents in the board meetings, and it's like, wait, Jasmine may not know this. Can we give it a little bit more time? And you know, so there's certain things that I'm like, no, I get it. I have an MBA too. Like, I get it, but you know, but it's just the respect that I feel in this space. And I went to University of Michigan, so it's like, when I was there, affirmative action was going on. And so I didn't think about it until several years later as an engineer. I'm like, wow, you know, I too may not have gotten accepted into University of Michigan if there was no affirmative action. Because when I started there, it was 8% Black. And then when they got rid of affirmative action while I was there, it went down to less than 2% Black. And so I'm like, wow, you know, even though I'm about to graduate from this university, I too may have never been accepted to it if, you know, just different considerations were made. And so love affirmative action for that reason, but then also love like this time. And so that the responsibility that I think the different theaters have made of making their board more diverse. And so there's several women on our board, but then the intentionality. And so, you know, somebody may have, I'm not going to say deserved it more than me, but somebody may have been closer connected or have more experience in this direct space than me, but I deserve it too. And so I'm happy to be here, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to be my complete self while I'm here to serve.
That's right. That's right. John, how about your thoughts, especially with you being a board member at Moxie? And I'm looking at a lot of the projects you have coming up that primarily deal with the lives and experiences of Black women. Talk to me a little bit about what you feel about how important it is for representation, especially at this time, and especially in this industry, for people, for not just for us to be seen, but for these organizations to understand how important it is to have somebody Black or other and other representation on their boards, and how that trickles down through the whole organization, and then what eventually ends up happening on stage.
Right. I've never been a fan of the token, because throughout my career, the only one. They're like, oh, John's like this and you're not like the others. And not just people throughout their career. So a lot of businesses in the past would put that minority on there just to say, look, we have a Black guy. Literally, I've experienced that before. But I think with the Rep and Moxie and other organizations here in San Diego, because it was before Black Lives Matter, is that I know a lot of these boards were trying to diversify their boards. How can we include more people? What do we need to do? How do we reach these people? And how do we diversify our board? So I think it begins at a very young age, like I was talking about elementary school and high school, because you have to develop that interest. And then so people can see, first of all, when you're in elementary school, you're not really seeing color until people tell you about it. But you just see, I like this, I like that. But then once you're told you're different or whatever, then it's about, oh, do I see someone that looks like me in that thing that I like? And if I don't, then maybe I'm not going to go that way. And then maybe you have this interest that you still want to go that way. But like Jasmine said, if you don't have an affirmative action program that gives you that opportunity, because you may not have people in your house or your community that actually understand how to navigate those roads, those pathways. So it's very important to give people an opportunity to express themselves. Now, once you're on a board, the trickle down thing you talked about, I think when you have a diverse board, it brings diversity in ideas. So there may be some plays that the board was given to look at by the artistic director that don't include Blacks or don't tell a diverse story, but then that these people, the diversity on the board, can say, well, wait a minute, there's a story very similar to that includes this, and maybe we want to look at this. You know what I'm saying? So I think it brings a whole new perspective on how the arts are seen and who they're seen by, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And we're talking very much about in general, and we've touched on this question, but would love to see if anybody would care to answer this, because one of the things that we were talking about before we came on camera is, there is, as you said, John, there has been all of these conversations about starting to diversify. How do we bring more Black people on? How do we bring more people of color on? And so many of the conversations go to, well, either we don't know those people, or we feel like they won't be able to pay the board dues, and we don't know about doing scholarship opportunities. And so my question is really, why was it important for each of you to represent? Why do what do you represent, and why was it important for you to stand up and represent? If anybody would care to answer that.
For me,
yeah, go on, John.
Sorry, it was more about the woman's voice initially, because I saw them being oppressed in the theatrical field, and I wanted to help that voice get amplified. So that was the first and foremost for me. Moxie at that time was doing diverse plays. I mean, I saw people that looked like me on stage. They had a Black artistic director. So in my mind, there wasn't much of a problem at that theater. So yeah, it was more for the female voice for me initially.
Stephanie, what were you going to add?
I was going to add that since my experience was really looking for an opportunity to provide service and marry that with my literature interest, then that's really what motivated me. It was less for me that I was an African-American woman than it was those kinds of things. And so since then, of course, I mean, I always feel a sense of responsibility. I think we all do when we're on a board to give voice to the kinds of issues that may happen, may occur in an organization. But I think this is sort of meaningful on many levels. Having the staff of the organization see that there's someone of color on the board. I think when I joined the board, I may have been the only African-American person on the board, and that was just a few years ago. Now the board is about 20% people of color, and from a variety of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, to reflect the community of San Diego, which is very, very diverse. I think I saw the statistic, it was about 5 years ago, but it was about 55% of people in San Diego are of color. And that's huge. It's a really unique place in that way. So what led me to the Globe, to the old Globe, was not that I'm an African American woman and I'm going to go in there and be an activist. It was more, this is what my passion is. And since then, I've found opportunities to be able to have a voice there, which I think has been very important and helpful to being sitting on the board. We have 53 members on the board. That's quite a lot. 53 members on the board. And so in part of that governance role is decision-making, making decisions, helping to guide and provide feedback to the leadership and support them. And so having various voices in today's age, if you don't have that on a board, then, well, there will be lots of questions for you. So, that's what pretty much led me.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to, for me, same thing or similar thing as Stephanie. Like, it wasn't because I was a Black woman that I thought this board needed to reflect people like me. It was more so, I mean, and I went through, I think, 4 different interviews with a few of the different board members. And what the theme that I realized kept coming up for me was helping more STEM people, and like a lot of my network are Black engineers. So helping these Black engineers come to the theater for the first time, like, you know, they're early career, mid-career, or even later career engineers who've never been to the theater before, and exposing these very technical people, but also culturally artistic. And so, you know, when you design your own t-shirts and you design your own logo and all of these artsy type things, but you don't even know that they're art really, or you don't associate them as art. And so really exposing these people that have that art in them, and maybe they can find a way to resonate that art on the stage. And yeah, of course, we just grow up as like, oh yeah, you know, plays aren't really for Black people, or musicals, you know, people don't really know what they're saying, or things like that. But you know, if you're a rapper, then you can maybe find a space for yourself. And like, once you go, you can get inspired in a different way. And that's usually what it does for me, is just like a different form of inspiration. And so being able to bring that STEM community, especially the Black STEM community, to the arts, but then, and also, I guess, in the long run, making it an easier sell. So if more STEM people know about arts, and more art people know about STEM, then when I have the STEAM university, I don't have to like really explain it as much anymore. And so, yeah, so that's also a nice win out of it for me.
Yes.
You know, Stephanie, there's something you said that I want to touch on, and Susan Udavin is in the audience tonight. She was watching last night with Sam, and she kind of brushed upon this about the size, you know, how important is the size of a board. And there was something that you said about what the percentage was when you got there, and then to what it is now. Can you speak to if there were any growing pains in transforming that board? Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask, in transforming that board and growing in size and becoming diverse, what were the growing pains, or maybe some of the grumblings in that process happening?
Well, this is where I think leadership is so important. The leadership of we have an artistic director and a managing director, but also a board chair. And I think leadership is really, really critical in this arena, because when you have leadership that's committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, then it makes the messaging a lot different than if you don't. And so in the time that I've been on the board, there's been a strategic plan developed. It was approved by the board in September of last year or so. And that strategic plan, the core of it is diversity, equity, and inclusion. One aspect of it, it's got 3 sort of categories. And one aspect of it is the people we serve. And diversity, equity, and inclusion, it mentions in the strategic plan and also in this roadmap that I've been trying to slip into our conversation. But it mentions board composition, it mentions board leadership. And so when you have that kind of leadership in the organization and also on the board itself, then it makes the experience of someone who's of color on the board a lot easier in a lot of ways. You don't feel that you're alone, even though all of us have different viewpoints, but it allows us to be able to share those viewpoints. And as I mentioned earlier, the murder of George Floyd really kind of accelerated this work. So the strategic plan and the organization's moving in that direction of DEI, but then you have this crisis that's happened, and you've got economic crisis, health crisis, and then of course that would happen in May. And so we've had lots of conversations, and those conversations have really moved us forward. And so honesty, empathy, understanding, all of those things really have come to play in just a few months. I tend to wonder if we were not in a COVID-19 pandemic, when we, being at home, reflecting on all of this, if we would have gotten as far as we have. I'd like to think that we would have. But that's what I would say in terms of challenges. You know what it's like being the only person in the room. You know what it's like. And so there's a sense of responsibility always, but we've been in those kinds of rooms all along the way in our lives. John went to Montana for college. I went to Utah for college. I mean, I've had an experience in Detroit. So I don't know, you just kind of adapt, don't you? You adapt and you adjust.
I'm impressed to hear that you said that it's a 53-person board, but that you feel like you have a voice. That to me is what's important as far as representation, because it's not just having a seat at the table, because that's a big table and folks can get lost in their seats there. But the fact that even at that sizable table, everyone has a voice, I think that's fantastic. One of the things that I want to ask, we started this conversation kind of talking about how theaters have started putting out their statements. Sam was on talking last night about theirs. I am curious about how you feel about the statements that your respective theaters have put out and how involved the board was in that process.
So Moxie's statement was done by staff. I mean, they ran it by us, but they took it upon themselves to go for it. And I've never had a problem with Moxie stepping up to the plate doing stuff like this. So in my mind, it wasn't a reactionary thing. It was like, oh no, we need to get on board with this. They're out there in the trenches. So.
Yeah, no, for me, that was already developed when I joined the board. And so it was really nice that, I could Google a place and they had one page already dedicated to Black Lives Matter and their statement on diversity. And so that was really encouraging. But of course, we know that just because somebody has it on their website isn't really what they actually live. So in my 4 interviews, I'm also interviewing them on like, where do they see it going? Is there a space where I can bring all of me to this board? Will it be received and accepted? I mean, and then even, for me, it's like, is there anybody who already looks like me there? Or am I going to be the one trying to forge this whole movement? And so, so that was really nice to see that there was already a statement that's embedded in San Diego Rep, what's been done for a long time, bringing this diversity aspect to the stage and having different leaders on the stage, and even having custom roles written for just people who usually don't get the spotlight on the stage.
I'm super proud.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Ahmed, I'm super proud of what's occurred. The social justice roadmap, it's on the website now. It was placed there. I think it's got a date of October 12th. And I'm just really, really proud of it. I know you'll have some more in-depth conversations about the details of it, but I would just welcome everybody to take a look at it, because the Oak Globes, I haven't taken a look at all of them. I did take a look at the La Jolla Playhouse a few months ago, but the detail of it, it's about systems, structures, and processes. And I'm thinking that when you change those, then you're going to be able to change culture, and that will be sustainable over the long term, even after I'm on the board, after our leadership has moved on to other opportunities. If we don't want them to leave, I don't want that message to get out. But we what is set in motion in the social justice roadmap, I think could be very much transformative for the institution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel the same way about the action plan that La Jolla Playhouse put in place. It really is about breaking down systemic. I never know when I'm supposed to use which one of those, but breaking down all of the things that are entrenched in what we do, the things that were built into the structure. Let's dismantle it. And I appreciate, and I know that this happened at the Old Globe as well, that just things halted. I will speak only for the Playhouse right now, but everything halted. And all of our artistic meetings were dedicated to the language and what are we really going to do. So I just appreciate a lot of exactly what you're saying, that this is a shift. And I don't know that I completely feel the same way that you do, Stephanie, and having the hope that this would have happened whether or not we were at home. I don't think it would have, but we don't have to think about that because we were. And this is happening, and we have the attention, the time and attention to be able to put toward this where it's absolutely necessary.
Can I add one more thing, please?
Yeah, for sure.
Piggybacking on what you both just said, I think it's also incumbent upon the audiences to open their minds and be open to other types of art forms, not just the things that they've been used to, because we're all victims of the same system.
You know, it's funny that you say that, and I want to double back to something that Stephanie said, but when me and Jacole talked to Sheldon Epps, and he talked about when he started at Pasadena Playhouse, and how, Jacole, was it a board member or was it just a longtime subscriber? Was it a board member?
I think it was a board member, yeah.
That was basically telling them like they weren't coming back to the theater. Like, you know, he didn't know what Sheldon was about to do with the theater or what he was going to turn into. I guess everybody thought it was about to turn into the Black Ghetto Theater or something like that. Now that Sheldon was going to be the artistic director. But I don't know how many years later he said it was that same person came back to him in the lobby and thanked him for being there and was glad that he was there. I know when we released, when we first released, earlier this summer, when we first released statements, we got those responses. We got those responses from longtime subscribers and donors that were just like, a lot of people were really disappointed to read them. I wasn't surprised because I knew it was coming. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, y'all should have, that's coming, In the meeting the other day in speaking with Sam and the artistic staff about this, like I always mention that, this particular movement will never be separated from COVID, and I don't have the confidence that I don't have the confidence that it would have been met. This moment would have been without us being on lockdown. I think it was the combination of the country being shut down. I think it was the combination of economics being turned on their head, and then, and seeing, the death of George Floyd. And I think it all came to be this perfect storm, for 2020. And sometimes I do wish that, but like Jacole said, we don't have to worry about that because it is what it is. But I do still have to worry that, as we talked about yesterday, racism is a very, very strong organism. It's a very, very strong thing. And it seems to find its way back to the forefront. And so I want to get your thoughts as we move forward. What are the things that need to happen to make sure that, because what I'm afraid of is that we get down the road, restrictions get eased. It's almost like the election. I don't want everyone to get comfortable. Don't get comfortable. Don't just head back to brunch. There's stuff to do. And so I want to get your thoughts as we do move forward. What are your thoughts or fears as we move forward and theater opens back up? What needs to happen to make sure that these mindsets don't come back around, or the mindset that everybody has now, we don't get lethargic or inertia that, sets in and we just go back to business as usual.
We're using that sciencey word, inertia. You only use that because John and Jasmine are here.
That's good.
He ain't
That's
never
good.
said inertia before.
Hey, it was in there. I figured let me pull one out of
Put it in there.
the bag.
Yeah, I can start that. Yeah, and so yes, again, we don't need to go into like if this would have been a thing, but one lesson that I'll say that I learned from COVID is the value of life. And so that was like a really big thing that people were understanding towards, March, April, even prior to that when people were passing away because of COVID. And so just understanding the value of life, and then to have someone take someone else's, that COVID didn't take that life, and so I think that may have also been a big thing, or at least it was for me, that, there's this pandemic going on that's taking lives, but then there's people taking lives, and then there's just life that it's their time to go, and so just naturally, or in car accidents, or my dad ended up having a stroke over the summer. And so it's just like, there's so many ways to value life, and for it to be taken from someone, I think that was a big part of it for me. That was just like, wow, this is crazy. And so just moving forward to understand that everyone's life is valuable, that Black Lives Matter, but that's really what it's about, that, it's value and it's different perspectives, and you have no idea what's going on with that person. And even when they're on the stage, there's an actual person that's the actor on the stage, so, they can pretend to be a character, but then they also have their life outside of there. And so to know that our lives and our presence is sometimes intimidating and not welcome in certain spaces, and then to understand that it's tough. Life is tough being Black in America. And so, a lot of it that we live on an everyday basis, I think other people got a glimpse of that. I also think that it's kind of just a thing that happened in Black history again, at this point, that people were more concerned about other things than life. And so, I already think it's dwindling. I love this space, that we are listening space, that is ongoing, that I feel like probably will be ongoing for a very long time, because we need to be reminded, as much as we don't want to be, we need to be reminded that this is still a thing. People are still dying. Black people are still dying from hypertension still, and so like there's other issues that are killing Black people. And so to be able to be in a space where we can save lives instead of more of them being taken, especially intentionally taken, then that's where we should move forward from here.
Yeah, I share the emotion and the pain and all of that. It's been a really hard 6 or 7 months or so, but also I remember I also said that there's joy here. So I happen to not say no to a lot that the Oak Globe asked me to do, hence I'm here tonight. But one of the things I do is I'm co-chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, and I mentioned the plan that was approved by the board last September. And it's also work that I do at the college. But what happens is that if you measure what you value, then what occurs as a part of the plan can be discussed. It can be, you can ask questions about it. So as board members, one of our responsibilities is to ask these kinds of critical questions, to have these start these sort of courageous conversations, and kind of talk about metrics. Ask the organization, do you have metrics for these? And can you give us reports about what's happening in this plan? And so in those ways, I feel very, very optimistic that at least for the Old Globe, which is what I can speak to, that as we move forward, that there's going to be some demonstration of progress. And it's going to be transparent. I think transparency is important too here. And so you'll see the progress on websites and that sort of thing. And so then the public, you know, the audience that we want to attract to the Globe, the current audience that's in the Globe, and other theaters as well, I think we'll be able to hold the Globe accountable, because I think that's part of this work is to hold the organizations accountable.
Mm-hmm. I think observation leads to wisdom is one of my favorite phrases, and that we need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Mm. And this conversation, as Stephanie said earlier on, needs to continue. It needs to be ongoing, sort of like a truth and reconciliation type thing. We're not going to heal if we keep sweeping this under the rug. And I go back to a play I saw at the Old Globe a long, long time ago. I think it was called Red Velvet.
Mm-hmm. It's on.
Yeah, people didn't want to go see his play because he was Black. He was a brilliant artist. And it was amazing. So we are still living the same issues that Blacks were living way back when. And that's because this conversation has never been had in the United States. And until we have it, there's no moving forward. As Jasmine said, I'll paraphrase, but we're fatigued. I'm tired. So other people need to step up. So
that was like that reminds me of what Sam said last night, that when he met Amiri Baraka and he told Sam that, you know, you could just live your life and just learn about you. He said, I have to know everything about you and me. Mm-hmm. You know, he told Sam, I got to know everything about me, but I got to know everything about you too. You know, it's not enough. I can't just walk through America knowing about me and think everything, you know, is all good. One other consideration, especially with all of you being board members, as these plans are going into effect and as we do want them to continue, we already know, like, everybody in the performing arts right now is that, you know, just because we can't do what we do, you know, money is a huge consideration. We know what's happening to budgets. We know what's going on. We know people are being laid off. We know that. But at the same time, as we move forward with these equity and diversity plans, they're going to cost money too. We're gonna have to spend money to do it. With that being said, I want to ask you guys what you feel about something that Sheldon Neff told us about having the courage to let some of those subscribers go, or let some of those, you know, board members or big subscribers go that don't want to deal with moving forward with these plans. You know what I mean? Those who are just looking at this and they threaten to take their money elsewhere. Like, I know that could be a big threat. Thoughts on what it's going to take for administrators to have the courage to stand up to that and try to find a way.
Artists have to create art, and if someone's holding dollars over your head saying you must create this type of art, and your heart's saying no, you let them go. They're not really serving you or the community that you say you want to reach.
You know, there's some fears possibly embedded in that statement that you made, or that kind of perspective. There are multiple fears potentially. One of them could be that DEI is going to compromise standards of excellence for all of our theaters. And actually DEI does the opposite. Actually, DEI actually raises the standards of excellence of an American theater, which is what we're all engaged in. So I hope, certainly, if I haven't heard of anything, honest, I haven't heard of anything, you know, donors leaving or anyone like that. Certainly, I hope that if that does happen, then we have a situation that Ahmed, like what Ahmed talked about, and he gave the example of, that, you know, down the road, the person comes back and says, oh, I thought my fear was going to be realized, but it's not. And so I'll come back because I love the theater. I just think people are enriched by it. They're enriched by it, and they won't stop coming because they're so enriched by it.
Yeah, and my thought is just, you know, I think those who would want to leave, or yeah, it may just be a fear thing, you know. And I know somebody asked, like, what do we mean when we say other people? And so I don't necessarily mean just white people. You know, basically, like, Black people are at the bottom of every chart, or the top of all the negative charts. And so it's we need everybody else to come alongside us and in this journey and this progress. And so yeah, it's part of it is what we need to do. And if people are afraid of that, and I think that's really what it would come down to, is just more of a fear thing, that you'll be missed out on, that your life won't matter as much, or that you know, you'll get erased in history. And it's like, no, like all the history books we have are all about other people's history, you know. And so it's having a space where we can actually be written in history books for a good thing. And, you know, in present times, you know, the different people that I know San Diego Rep has had on the stage this year alone, and the ones that are coming up in the near future, that now they're part of the playbill, you know, they're part of San Diego Rep history, like present tense history, and not, you know, the first anything anymore. And so then that's also amazing that we can now be in these history books.
It's so interesting. And I know we got to wrap this up because we're already so far above time, but this conversation could go on forever. But you touched on so much of it, Jasmine, as far as fear. And I say it's fear and security, at least from our standpoint, because I will say the only time it feels like we are truly considering plays that go off of what we feel is our mission, the only time we're considering plays with, let's say, an all-white creative team or an all-white cast or what have you, are when there's money attached to it. And it's a person whose relationship we have had for a long time. And this is a commercial producer or somebody, again, who has been willing to fund things in the past. But there's that fear of saying, no, we're not willing to do that. We appreciate you wanting to bring this play to us, but that's not on our mission. There's that fear of losing that money, that if we say no to this one, maybe they won't bring other plays to us. And that's our bread and butter. That's what takes us to broad, that's commercial. But then there's also that security. And it's such a warm security blanket to know that this play is brought to us with money. No, it's not something that we would probably produce otherwise, but this person has money and they have the possibility of bringing names, which brings in more money. And so we're afraid to take that security blanket off, because what might happen? Oh, we might get new audiences. We might do something dope that's not that. Or you know what? We might lose a couple people, but so be it. Bye, Felicia. We don't need you here. If you don't like the direction that we're going, don't come back. But we're afraid to say that as well. I never use that term, by Felicia. I don't even know what just happened to me just then. I don't know who got channeled through me. But go. That's the whole point. Like, let's stop operating our institutions out of fear.
Yeah. As we get ready to wrap things up, I want to give each one of you an opportunity to, you know, just give some final words for now, because I expect to have y'all back in the near future, because I don't see this platform going anywhere. And the reason why is because we have loyal watchers like Susan, who just told me that was a subscriber who said that to Sheldon Ebb. So Susan was like, I got y'all. I was watching. It was a subscriber.
Super viewer.
But just a moment for you guys to, you know, give some parting shots to the audience who's watching, and, you know, any words you want of encouragement or anything you want to say, because everyone who is on this call is in some way part of this community. They're in part. If they didn't want to see this theater community survive, trust me, they would not be watching this right now. Everyone who's watching this is invested in seeing this theater community survive, and not only survive, but go forward and thrive and thrive in diversity. So if there are any parting words, I'll start with you, Again, I'll go clockwise. I'll start with you, Jasmine. If you have any parting shots you want to give our audience tonight.
Well, yes, thank you for having me for sure. It's like I said, it's a pleasure to serve and to be here and to learn myself. And so yeah, just being in this space where we can speak and you all are listening, that having this as a space where we can do that. But then also one thing that I'm loving about it is that I haven't really seen too much, of course I haven't been on the board long, but I haven't seen too many collaborations between the theaters. And like, this is one of the things that has grown out of that is like, if we want to have Black board members on one panel, it has to be one from this one and one from this.
Right.
But there's not a lot of us. And so like we say, no, we'll be back, because if you want to do another one with Black board members, there's only a couple of us, so like this is an awesome time, and then like brings all of these theaters to start collaborating and showcasing like, okay, so who's got the best diversity? Okay, so who's got the most growth? And like even start competing in that way, which is awesome. Like we can only win if we're all competing around the lens of equity. So that's my final thoughts. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. How about you, Stephanie?
I want to thank you, all of you as well. I really appreciate getting to know you. I feel like I know you now, so we'll have to keep in touch. I want to share a quote that I read in an article, I think this week. It's by Dominique Morisseau, and everybody knows who she is, I think. And I think that she meant this quote, well, it actually just applies to everyone. And I just wanted to kind of read this to you. She happens to be from Detroit, and but that wasn't a bias here. It was a really great article. And the Old Globe put Skeleton Crew, we had Skeleton Crew, which is one of her plays on the stage in about, I think, 2016, 17 or so. But it says, if you truly love people, you learn their language. If you truly love people, you learn their language. And to me, it spoke to empathy. It spoke to engagement. What we're trying to do with audiences, all of our audiences, is to understand and have empathy and understanding for the different languages that people have that we're trying to attract to the theater. So I just want to thank everybody again, and thanks for having me, and look forward to joining you again.
Thank you, Stephanie. How about you, John?
Thank you. And I'm also very honored to be here. Thank you for the invitation to speak or be a part of this great panel. I think this is a great opportunity for the arts, like, again, life hands you lemon, make lemonade. And this space you have, we are listening. I think this is great and needs to continue. I think the people who support the arts need to continue to support through our transitioning on how we're going to still get the message or the artistic message out there. Because if you think about it, art or theater or storytelling is probably the oldest human art form, if you think about it. We love telling stories. That's how we communicated initially. And we're still communicating that way. And I think if we're open to, as Stephanie said, new forms of communication, and we're really, really listening, I think we can all, as a society, as a global society, come out of this pandemic on the right side of history. So I really encourage everyone to stay with it. Don't give up on us, because we're going to not go anywhere as long as you're still listening to us.
Again, thank all of you for joining us tonight. It's greatly appreciated. Another great conversation. The audience thanks you. I want to remind everybody we'll be back in 2 weeks. I click on it now so that you can click on it before when we end. Sharissa closes the page and it's not there, but I did put in the link for our next We Are Listening, coming up on December 3rd with Destiny Lilly and Nicole Pryor Dennis-Serzian. I think I got it right. Okay, got close.
And it's going to be a fantastic conversation about representation in casting and in talent management, which I think is going to be something that a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Again, everybody, thank you. Make sure you visit sdrep.org, visit lajollaplayhouse.org, visit theoldglobe.org. Check out all of the, I know we can't get together, but we're trying to put together some spectacular digital events for you all to take part of. This is part of that. So thank all of you. Jacole, you got anything else for the folks?
I just want to say that the Rep and the Globe are leading the charge on Black Girl Magic. Everybody else got to step up. Hopefully next time we see this group, that magic is spread to all of the other theaters. Keep that going, ladies. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody.
Everybody, have a good night, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Have a good one, and thank all of you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
good night,
Bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers.